Hey guys, welcome to the Child Care Director's Chair podcast. This is your host, Erica Sokosio, and I'm going to ask you a question. Raise your hand if you've ever sat through a professional development that felt more like a professional detention. Yeah, me too, same. It's time to break from boring PD and start choosing training that actually lights up your team and helps you grow, not just survive. So today we are joined with an amazing trainer, Cheryl, and I'm going to give her a minute to introduce herself. But her and I both agree that boring PD has got to go. So Cheryl, welcome to the Child Care Director's Chair podcast. Tell folks a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. And I'm super excited to be here. It's my second ever podcast, so I'm super excited. I am originally from Franklin, Massachusetts, born and raised. I moved to Rhode Island, got married, bought a house, had a kid, kept the house, kept the kid. And I embarked on my career in early childhood. I had a passion for infants and toddlers, and at the time, you could take infant toddler massage, you could take infant toddler sign language, and that was about it. So there was a gap, and I wanted to fill it because I was tired of having to do my annual hours. Preschool is just as vital and important. Don't send any hate emails just yet. But it was. I felt there was a really big need for infants and toddlers. So long story short, last September, I successfully defended my dissertation. So I'm now Dr. Hovey, and I specialize in infant toddler development.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourself. So let's talk about traditional PD and why it fails adults.
It's just daunting. We've come so far, but yet we've stayed stagnant from the days of when, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one that remembers this, when you were in school and they wheeled in the TV with the VCR and you were like, yes, right? So we went from the days where your director would have you watch a video and write a 2-page summary and you'd get a little certificate with, apples or cherries on it or whatever. But we haven't come that far, right? So we need to break away from, just as every child learns differently, so do adults. And a good training will hone on different aspects of that, whether you're tactile or kinesthetic or visual, or you need to be up and moving. And believe me, I have the gift of gab, but if you're in a training that someone's talking for 10 minutes longer than the average age of the person in the room, then you're just, it's boring, and it's not getting people where they are. You shouldn't be sitting through slide after slide with bullets, and it needs to encompass multifaceted ways for adults to actually capture that knowledge, get excited about it. And we're talking about your general 2-hour trainings, right? We're not, you're not going to be Mensa students. You're not going to, we're giving you a little trickle of some information, and then hopefully it sparks some interest and you go out and you further your own research or your own interest and get more.
Yeah, talk a little bit about the difference between like passive learning and active engagement.
Yes. So when you're passively learning, you're receiving the information, and research has shown that the way that you can kind of retain something is that, and I'll put it in easy terms, is that you can receive it, but then you have to act on it and you have to do something with it. So whether you get up and you engage in an activity, or the presenter or the trainer can show how it's going to impact your practice, and you can actually see and work in a group setting with the other people in the training or presentation, so that how am I going to be able to bring this back to my practice? How am I going to be able to implement this? Do I have the skills and the understanding of what's being presented to me? And then when, I'm not going to get really heavy into the research, but when you're more likely to retain it if you are engaging with it and you're doing something with it. So it takes about 14 days for something to be a habit and to learn a new skill. So that's why you want to keep working on it and engaging with
as a
that
director
material.
who sends staff to PD, there's nothing I hate more than when they go to PD and they give me a certificate, oh, here's my paper, and then they don't implement it. Like, that is the worst, right? Waste of their time, waste of my money, right? So you really want to see people, including yourself, when you go to a PD, that you're implementing it and that you're being reflective of what you learned, right? And I think,
Yeah, and I want to know there's people like me, right? Like there's people like me that are in the infant toddler room and we didn't just get stuck there to cover maternity leave or
mhm,
anything like that. Like we want to be in this room, right? And then also to have a supportive director, because I can tell you, like, I've done trainings where I'm like, we have to get away from crisscross applesauce doing, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I don't care, is doing like large music and movement and getting them growing. And why is that vital and important? But if you go back to your center and the director is like, no, nope, we're not gonna, we're gonna do the same old, or that the phrase that I can't stand is,
mm,
we've always done it this way, right? So it's to have a supportive network that you can actually try to implement some. What does this look like for me? So how can I take this and use it? Is it relevant to my work? Right. So I do one on temperament and how vital temperament usually just gets breezed over in a chapter in a textbook. And it's really vitally important for people, for educators to understand that everyone has a temperament, right? And I can generally, when I do it and I'm like, oh, who has to eat, sleep, and, use the rest pretty much the same time every day, right? Generally, that person is your opener. Right. And we don't want to touch our openers because openers are so valuable and nobody wants to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to actually go and open a sentence. So those people that do, God bless them, right? And I tell my friends, the only time I'm up that early is if I'm going to the airport, is that you want to be cognizant of that they're going to go to lunch every day at 12 o'clock. They're not going to go at 12:05. They're not going to go at 11:55. They're going to go at 12. They're going to come back at 1. They're not going to come back early. They're not going to stay late. They're scheduled, right? The person that embraces change. And only 2% of the population embrace change, right? So they're your cheerleader. That's who your director wants to go to say, hey, we bought this new curriculum and we got these new things and we're doing this new whatever it is, because they're going to go back and they're going to put it out into the flock and be excited about it. And so it's really just having a trainer that's passionate about what they're talking about and they're training on, and they've walked the walk. They've been in the classroom. They've been, in the different age groups, and they have that real life experience that they can share with other people. I tend to find that people in the trainings, they have to be there, right? You have to do so many hours a year. But I want people that want to be there, right? That are excited to come and see me or whomever it is for a training, and they're excited to learn. And there's this big rush at the end of a training when people come up and they're like, oh my God, I have this one child in my classroom and I want to ask you about this. And you said this, and this is great. And then, or they're emailing you after and they're asking you questions. And so that's where you get those aha moments within
yeah,
that
you're
setting,
the leader of what I
training
call the
session.
unicorns because the toddler teachers are 1 in a billion. Finding a amazing toddler teacher who's invested, who is professional, who can walk the walk and talk the talk is super hard. I would say that's probably the number one position that is so hard to find in a center. So I love that, that you're out here putting together quality professional development for folks who are really excited about that age group because they're a lot of work. They're like little teenagers. Yeah, they're like little
Toddlers get a bad rap.
teenagers. Yeah,
Toddlers get a bad. Yep, exactly. And generally when, I'll do the session and I'll ask people and I'll say, it's taming the temperament, the terrible twos or whatever, and I give them a picture because I know what their classroom is, right? I know there's a child biting, there's a child hitting, there's a child that's just like, oh, potty training, I just peed on the floor. There's that whole encompassment of what goes with being a toddler teacher. It's they a lot of times what we feel that they can do and what they actually can do are two different things. So it's not until you kind of model that and show that to them in a concrete way that they can understand it, is that then it starts to like, oh, I'm like, you can't give them a runway in a classroom. They're going to
yeah.
run, right? And telling them hands are not for hitting, they're like, didn't you just see me whack Johnny? Did you miss that? In about 5 seconds, I'm gonna do it again, right? If you you turn around, I'm gonna go do it again. Right. So, and it's also helping the parents to understand that their kid's okay. Right. Like if you're the biter or the bitee, one or the other, right. Is that it's a natural course of development. Right. And that your educators are your best first step outside of parents is to really rely on them. So I think even encompassing some PD where educators feel empowered to bring the information back and share it with their families that are in their
Yeah,
program is
absolutely.
also important as
So
well
what does
too.
good PD look like?
Me?
But, a lot of people who listen to the show, they have to pick what conferences they're sending their staff to, what's worth investing, what isn't. So what does it look like?
I would say is I'll often engage when someone reaches out to me and they're like, are you available November 11th or whatever holiday it is? And I'll have a conversation with them and say, are you just providing a generic training that for your staff? What ages do you have? Then also, or are you trying to target a particular challenge that you're having? Whether it's gossip in the workplace or, if someone will talk to about you, they will talk about if someone will talk to you, they will talk about you, right? So also, is it just you don't have enough staff or not trained in certain aspects or whatever? So, and then sometimes the center might not be a good fit, right? Or the presenter might not be a good fit. Don't just hire someone because they're like, oh, I'm an early childhood consultant and I
Mhm.
have this day free, right? So kind of I resolve it to kind of buying a puppy, right? Like they say, like you have to sit with the puppies. You want one that comes up to you. You shouldn't have to advertise your puppies. You should have a waiting list for a good puppy. And I understand you should be able to go and adopt. Don't shop, don't adopt. We're not going to get into that, but just follow me here. Is if you go to a trainer and they have unlimited openings, then what is that like? Do you know what I mean? Like if I tell people I'm like, no, I'm booked on these days, I'm booked on these days, like I only have it's
Mm.
ask for references, ask for people that have used this person before, right? Are they, don't just go by what their rates are because you do get what you pay for. And there's an understanding, we know what trainers know what you're worth, right? And we know what we can deliver. And if what's the price of if you pay someone $100 and your staff are bored, they're not listening, they're on their phone, they're doing whatever, and then you're not getting anything that's going to improve their practice in your center, right? Versus someone that is like, wow, thank you so much for picking this trainer or sending me this session because I learned X, Y, and Z. And now I'm excited to go back. And I also have a resource that she said we can email her or Facebook
Mhm.
Messenger, Instagram or chat or whatever, whenever. Like she's accessible. Right. And that speaks volumes too. So I think it's really having a goodness of fit, having someone that is not just an expert or book smart in a topic, but that has worked in the field and
I
ask
love
them
that. Yeah, I see a lot of coaches who have never even owned a center or worked in a center. So yeah, I think you have to, kind of make that connection. I also think it's good to have maybe a couple of good trainers that come to your program because I think people are going to resonate with different people because let's face it, our staff are not all clones just like our children aren't, right? So trying to get some diversity, some different type of voices, and then also make sure that their philosophy, what they're teaching, aligns with your school's philosophy and vision and mission, right? So I think that's really
that's
important too.
also a trainer that someone will say to me, oh, can you train on school it? Can you do? I'm like, listen, I can
Sure.
go on, I can throw together information, but
Mm,
it's not what I'm passionate about. So I'll tell someone I don't train on that. That's not my area. That's not my wheelhouse. But I know
hmm
XYZ who is. And I have like a library of trainers to say, here you go. Or same with conferences like, oh, you couldn't make this conference because you're at a dance recital. I know this other great conference is coming up, over here. So I think that's important too, is knowing yourself and what you're passionate about
Yeah. So
in
far we've
general.
talked about, good PD should be interactive, it should be personalized, should be practical. Let's talk about like how about forward focused, right? Because things are changing a lot in our field. So, how do you make sure that you have training that isn't antiquated? Because just because it was good 10 years ago doesn't mean it's good now.
Yep. So that's vitally important, is that you stay relevant and you stay current in the field. My full-time hat is I'm the program director at Fisher College for the early childhood department. So I am continuously in the weeds of new they're redoing competencies or they're coming up with standards. Also is I'm updating our curriculum, because our curriculum at the college, at the higher ed level, also wants to stay relevant with what's in the field right now. A huge is trauma, specifically infant mental health, trauma informed care, toxic environments, how to reduce toxic stress it's actually what my dissertation was on, reduce toxic stress. And when I was trying to find participants and they would say, I don't have any kids with toxic stress, then you absolutely need the training, because toxic stress is everywhere. We just went through COVID. We have COVID babies right now that are going to school, and they absolutely were born out of toxic stress. So I think that having someone that stays active in the field. I'm also the current the Massachusetts affiliate for NAEYC president. I've sat on the board. I've sat on the Rhode Island AEYC board, a member of several organizations. I sit on high school advisory boards. So it's really important for me not to say, this is what I think you need. It's to be talking with the participants and the students to say, what do you need? Right? So it's, what do you need to be successful in your role right now? Because I may not be in the classroom, but I need you to be my eyes and ears. Right. And it came out about mental health was because I had some students that were coming to me and they're like, Johnny was sitting in large group and he came up to me and said, I'm doing, like my sister is hurting herself at home, and I'm like, wowzer, right? So it's really adding on an additional hat onto all the hats that educators already wear. So, so staying very current, relevant, us ourselves going to professional development and train the trainers or training sessions is important to stay.
So, here in Rhode Island, I know you know because you're right next door to us, we have to have the individual professional development plans. So, I think planning with purpose, right? So, how does the workshops and the trainer, coming out, like how do they align with the goals and the roles that are on the professional development plans? Or how are you building future leadership in your pipelines? So talk a little bit about that.
Yep. So the good old IPDPs is I actually do I've done a session, I haven't done it in a little while, but is on really not just filling it out to fill it out, but really having it be a working document that you can implement for your own personal growth. I'm also a CDA PD specialist, so we work with them setting their goals as well. So I think it's having that conversation once, if a center does, let's say, best case scenario, they do annual IPDPs around, let's say February of every year. The director or the admin should start to see some commonalities with their employees' goals, or it shouldn't just be, this is my goal. It should be implement into it. Like, how am I going to achieve this goal? Is this a short-term goal or is it a long-term goal? Because it's very different to just take a training than to say, source funding or scholarships or grants to go back to school and get a degree and that type of situation. So it's really having a director that has their thumb or their pulse on what their employees are looking for. And you may not hit on the majority, you may not hit on everybody at once, but you should really look at, when you're designing if you do a successful IPDP system, you should be able to build out your annual calendar and say, there's going to be some things that are going to come up in between depending on the population and turnover or whatever. But you should be able to say, like, okay, these are the 5 trainings outside of what's required that I want to try to identify trainers that can come in and do them for us in our situation. So I think it's important because we don't, as trainers, we don't see their IPDPs, but in having conversations you'll know whether this director is just, I just need you to come in and do 2 hours, or I specifically need this topic because I've seen it consistently with my staff. Challenging conversations with parents or difficult conversations with parents, struggle with like understanding and recognizing development, right? Like some children, if you're giving them 5-step instructions, they lost you after go inside and line up. Right. So figuring out truly what your staff needs within those
I think,
plans.
that's why I had brought it up, because I know most of the folks listening to this podcast are either lead teachers, the ed coordinator, or the director. And I want them to, because a lot of times they'll be like, oh yeah, I think this one sounds good. They read a description and like, that's kind of the end of it. And like you said, then they'll call you, what's the price? Here's the date. Cool, booked, right? But if you got 15 people on your staff that have, in part of their professional development, they need training on XYZ, but you're not bringing that in, then they're not going to meet what they need. And so it's important that we do that. I think
I will always ask, like, who are going to be the participants in the session. And okay, so this is my topic and this is my description, but what else do you need? And if they give me some specifics, I will let them know, like, okay, how does this sound? I can weave this in, or how does this, and as an experienced trainer, they should be able to, as long as it's within their wheelhouse, they should be able to, and ask them the question so that you're getting what you pay for, and that I'm expecting you to deliver on, this, and they
I was
can
going to
actually
bring I was
provide
going
that.
to bring that up and say, when you're hiring these folks, you had given a great list of, get recommendations, but you're maybe asking a little bit further too, telling them, this is what I really need. This is where my staff need to grow. And then, like you had said too, what resources will you have or be able to provide after the training, right? To make sure that, because one and done, we all know one and done is not going to make a whole world of difference. I don't care how much they implement it. You do need that consistency. So, as we start to wrap up, let's talk just a little bit about, pushing beyond compliance into like development, building a grow here culture, right? Because that's what we really want to do. We want to create internal career paths, mentorship, leadership ladders. And it starts with the training. That's where it starts. So talk a little bit about that.
Yep. So I think that, I'm obviously very vested in education and growth and learning. And I recently had a phone call. I will not use any names because we know that whole confidentiality, right? And we know that whole, person behind my tree right there, is that I was on the phone with them and they were not happy with me because they were like, well, I know this already. And I'm like, I can tell just from having the conversation with you that you don't, right? You're laying the foundation for everything. Educators have a huge job. You're laying this foundation. You're connecting the wires for everything these children are going to be able to do later in life, right? So you need to have a solid footing on what should a child be doing and when should they be doing it, right? And look at, starting with a 2-hour training. That's going to give you some overview and that's going to give you some, touching on that. But you get to a certain point where I understand you have to do 2 hours for regulation and compliance, but then professionally, this is a profession, right? If we're saying we want higher wages, we want less turnover, then put your money where your mouth is, right? And you look at all these opportunities between Massachusetts and Rhode Island with scholarships and teach scholarships and free community college and the Mass State Grant. I know I don't want to just solely plug Fisher, but if reach out to me, Fisher has some great initiatives and programs. We offer 40% off of tuition if you qualify. So connect with people that can advocate for you and do the work, right? Like you can't say, I expect $30 an hour and you're not willing to go and get a degree or an associate's degree or a CDA or whatever that looks like, right? And everyone can do it. I had someone, not gonna lie, last term I was asked to teach in person. I haven't taught in person in about 5 years. I do trainings in person, but my program's virtual. And she went up one side of me and down the other. And she was like, I'm only here because Head Start's making me be here. I don't like computers. I've never touched a computer. I blah, 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 blah. And then at the end of the course, when we were getting ready to do the next one, and I said, who's interested in enrolling in, we went from child growth and development to infant toddler curriculum. And she raised her hand. And I thought I was going to die, because that's what we're looking for, right? Is it's instilling in people you can do it, right? And you can achieve this. But it starts with that solid foundation in child growth and development. You have to know trust versus mistrust, Piaget's stages of cognitive development. And a lot of people know it. You've been in the field for 30 years, 20 years, 10 years. It's my job to label it. So it's when you're in that training and I'm like, do you see this? And then you get the head nod. You're like, yep, yep, yep. And I'm like, well, that's what they're doing. Right. So they have that experience. It's almost counterintuitive to what it used to be, where you go to school and then you have to get the experience. People have the experience, and now we have to label it for them and let them know that you have been doing
that's
this
great
all
advice.
along.
Great advice. Thank you so much for being such an amazing guest. For those of you who are listening, great PD is not reading slides when, someone's droned out in the background. We're talking about hands-on, brain-friendly, goal-focused PD that gets your staff engaged, growing, and excited about what's next, because you're not just doing the bare minimum for their current roles. Because here, the truth is, real leaders means preparing your team for their next position, not just managing them in this one. So thank you so much for tuning into the Child Care Director's Chair podcast. As always, have a great day.
Thank you.